Hey everyone, before we dive into today's episode, I do want to let you know that there is some discussion of the loss of a parent and the grief that surrounds that. It's pretty brief, but I do want to give you a heads up in case that's something that you are not in a place to listen to today. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to You Are What You Love. I am your host, Marissa Tandon, and today my guest is someone you may know better by his handle, Goncho Dreamer. He is a content creator, a streamer. You've seen him on sites like Twitch and TikTok streaming video games, and he's been kind enough to join us today. So please, everybody, welcome Fernando to the show.
It's me. I was gonna say Concho. I've gotten so used to having to try not to say
Your real name.
Yeah, but also my real name is very generic. So it is, but it's me, Fernando.
Yeah, that's right. Because you, for people who don't know, you also stream and make TikToks and do all these things under a pseudonym, like a superhero in the night.
I am a hero.
You are. You are bringing peace and joy to everyone.
I am, and I just realized I'm wearing a ring, and I should probably take it off because we have mugs here. And I'll just be making noises. You could. That's audio, right?
You can just cut it out.
Fix it in post. That's what they say in everything, right?
It makes my life so easy.
Yeah, but we're here to talk about me, so it's me.
It's so true. Speaking of you, what are we talking about today? What is the piece of media that changed who you are as a person?
Oh, I don't like talking about me.
Oh, no?
No, sorry.
Oh, it's so embarrassing.
Yeah, no. So we're going to talk about the Uncharted game series and kind of how that game in a weird way rocketed me into wanting to do live streaming on platforms like Twitch and YouTube and TikTok and anywhere else I could put my face.
Wherever you can find streaming content.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, for the uninitiated that perhaps don't know about Nathan Drake, what is the Uncharted video game series about?
So the Uncharted, it's a series pretty much. Imagine if you took Indiana Jones, Tomb Raider, those adventuring games. They're called platformers because you're jumping from different platforms, your character and whatnot. So it's an action adventure game about a treasure hunter who commits a lot of probably crimes that we just kind of just ignore because he's snappy and witty and hey, I'm making jokes.
Yeah.
But that's a different topic. But it's your classic action adventure, third person, so your camera's behind the character so you can see them moving around the level. And it's just the adventure of traversing and those classic Indiana Jones movies and just that feel of finding lost treasure and these secrets hidden just throughout the world.
Okay, so you're following this dude, Sir Francis Drake, and it's sort of like a treasure hunter type of vibe, right?
Yeah, the first one, it's about finding kind of the gold of El Dorado. The second one is finding the Atlantis of the Sands. And the third one that's the third one. The second one is about finding Shambhala. It's about finding these things we heard about in history and Francis of Arabia, all of these really cool stories. And taking that and just kind of turning it on its head. It's a little bit of adding a little bit of supernatural stuff to it, but it's just that classic, you're going to sit here and watch this popcorn movie that just takes you out of everyday life. You're just getting to have fun with it and you don't have to worry about taxes and all this other stuff that kind of plagues just you as a person in life.
Yeah.
And it just hits home so good with all of that because just escapism. It's escapism to the max.
Yeah. Were you playing video games a lot at the time, or is this an early kind of or?
For the longest time, my parents did not want me to have video games. That was just part of them because they didn't grow up with video games and whatnot. This wasn't part of their culture.
Sure.
And I remember when the PS1 came out, everyone wanted a PS1. And the boldest memory I have about how my gaming journey began was our living room used to have a door between where you could see into the kitchen, and it used to be a garage that my parents converted into a full-fledged living room, but the door still had one of those has grates on the bottom that you can see through and everything. And it was a day or so before my birthday, and they closed the door and they're do not look. And I remember because being a child, I was I'm gonna look. So contorting myself to look through the grates, and I saw them putting a box into wrapping paper, and I was that's a PlayStation. I know that box. I've been staring at that box in media forever. So my gaming journey started that early on. PS1, huge gamer. and then, like, the Uncharted series came out, during a really particular time, because that was the PS3 that I think came out in, like, 2006, 2007, around that time,
Sure.
and it kinda lined up with the passing of my father in '06, who his favorite movies were Indiana Jones.
Mhm.
So it was just, like, one of those weird universe, like, "Hey, this really bad thing happened to you, but we're gonna kinda give you, like, this cool way to remember him and
Hmm.
think about him." And he wasn't a gamer, but it was one of these series that I was like, I think he would have loved this somehow."
Hmm.
Um, so it took it from just like, "Oh, playing games for fun," to, "This is a really cool way that you can remember someone in your life who meant so much to you." And also, like, I feel like, at least for me, that was one of the first games that turned the entire experience into, like, instead of like, "Oh, I'm just playing a game," to, like, "I need to tell people about this. Like, I need to experience this with other people." And, like, when you watch sports, like, "Did you see that pass? Oh my god, ah, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
blah." And this turned that into gaming for me of, like, I need to find people to talk about this one mission where, like, this train completely flew off a mountain and, like, all of this stuff, which, like, led to where I am now of, like, I wanna game and share these really cool moments with people, like, watching me, or, like, get their take on it, because it's just part of that, like, I need someone else to see this and experience this with me.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned that your dad loved, like, Indiana Jones movies. Was that
Mhm.
something that you guys shared before Uncharted? Or before obviously, before Uncharted, but
I'm gonna get so much flack for this.
oh, no.
I do not think I have ever watched an Indiana Jones movie all the way through somehow.
Fernando.
I don't It's one of those movies that, like, I know everything about the movies, but I don't think I've ever sat down and watched them,
Yeah.
because and this was tormented me through film school. If you tell me to watch a movie, like, "It's a classic, you have to watch this," my brain goes, "No, I don't. No, I don't."
Okay, I think you would love them, but that's okay.
Yeah. No, I hold, like, I should watch them, and I would probably love them,
Yeah.
because old man Har well, at that point, not old man Harrison Ford, but just Harrison Ford not
Young, hot
caring.
Harrison
Yeah,
Ford.
yeah. Um, yeah, but no,
No?
somehow
Okay.
never watched them.
Cool.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, so, like, was it just that your dad was talking about them and you knew them in that
Yeah.
sense? Yeah?
Yeah, he talked about, because he was always into, like, Westerns, that's what he watched growing up, and then just Indiana Jones, like, he was huge into just the action adventure genre. So
Sure.
I heard him talk about it and all of that, and just share his love for it.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
nope, just never watched it.
I think it's okay. Harrison Ford and I forgive you. I can speak for him because we're so tight. Well, so you've got like a adventure genre, I almost like distaste, and then you found. Do you think like Uncharted finding it when you did allowed you to find it before people were so obsessed with it? Because I do feel like Uncharted is one of those games everyone's like, oh my god, you haven't played Uncharted, you gotta play. Like it's pretty up there.
I'm trying to think, because I don't know if I was necessarily on the forefront of,
Hmm.
like, loving it, honestly. 'Cause I mean, I got swept up in it, like, for sure, and I think the weird part was, because it came out on a console that was so expensive at the time,
Yeah.
that, like, a lot of people were not playing it, that it was also like, "I don't have any of my friends to talk to about this," because they don't have it.
Mm.
Um, so I don't know if I was, like, ahead or anything like that, like, I would love to sit here and be like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
discovered it.
yeah, I was the reason why the Uncharted series became so popular among everyone."
I guess I was just curious because it seems like your response to this popular thing is, "I
Mm,
don't wanna do that." But you're talking about a game that's quite one of those ones where I think even for me, I was at the time not playing it, but very aware of that
mm,
game, of
mhm,
other people playing it, of other
yeah.
people engaging.
I think my thing with, like, if you tell me to play, it's more so academia, like,
Mm,
where academia's like, "You have to watch this movie, because then you have to break it down and explain, like, the ideas of cinema," and I'm like,
sure.
"No, I don't.
No,
Are
I
we
won't
allowed
be
to
doing
curse on
that.
this or no?"
Yeah, you can curse.
"Okay, no, the fuck I don't. I don't need to break this down, no." Which doesn't go to video, like, if someone tell me, "You gotta play this video game," I'm like,
Mm.
"Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah."
Cool. So you played through and then you were wanting to talk to people about it. So did you
Mm.
find that group of people that you got to talk to about Uncharted?
Honestly, no.
No?
Like, it was such a weird like, no. Apparently, somehow I had surrounded myself with people who were gamers, but no one else really cared
Mm.
about this game. Not they didn't care, but, like, that was just not in their alley at all. Um, and I was probably a little bit further on the wave of people loving the game too, because there's always, like, these collector's editions and
Oh,
whatnot
yeah.
that come out that you can spend more money on,
Mhm.
and, like, one of them had a belt buckle, and one of them had, like, the necklace that he wears in the game, and I wore that with no care about being cringe. I wore that belt buckle for so many years, and it was just me repping the belt buckle. Like, some of my friends were like, "Oh, yeah, I get it," but they had 360s
Yeah.
and whatnot. They weren't playing PS3s,
Yeah.
so it was kinda like this constant longing of, like, I just want to share this excitement with someone, and I wasn't a huge, like, because I know there's forums, there's all this stuff.
Mm.
I was never really big on that. Um, Still to this day, I'm not. I don't know. I don't know. There's, like, a wall there of, like it's weird that the internet has become so big because it's like, "Don't talk to strangers," like, that taught
Sure.
me so much, and, so I never was a part of forums. It was just kinda me in my little bubble of, like, "I really like this thing and I need to tell people about it."
I yeah, again, like, I think I was such a Tumblr kid, especially at that time, and, like, there was one actor actually on Teen Wolf
Uh
that also cosplayed video games, and we all followed him,
Ooh.
and that was, like, that's how I remember Uncharted being a thing
Mhm.
because he would wear the necklace
Yeah,
also.
yeah, yeah.
And it said, and this is my big Uncharted knowledge. It says, like, "Sic Parvis Magna" on
Yeah,
it on the thing, and it means greatness from small beginnings, which I always
yeah.
really liked. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was one of those too that, like, I don't know, I always in life was kind of in between where, like, quote unquote popular, quote unquote, like, not popular, however you wanna
Mm,
put it. I was always kinda like that in between of, like, I definitely hung out more with, like, nerdy people and people like that, but I also played sports and I could have been like, "Oh, you're such a popular kid."
mm,
No, I'm not. So it was, like, kind of one of those, like, this just weirdly hits home
mm,
of, like, I can be great, I like, na, na," and just the, like, "Oh, here's this Nathan Drake dude who he does superhuman things, kind of, like, he can jump off really high things and climb and, like, typical action movie stuff, but he's not a superhero, he's just
yeah,
kind of a normal dude," which was really great about the series of, like, he's technically just a dude, he's doing some superhuman things, but he's just a normal guy, which is kind of the stories I've always loved of, like, for your main character, it's not the end of the world, but it's the end of their world.
mm,
So you can have, like, these normal people and, like, to the outside world, no one cares, but to them, it's like, "Oh, their world's crumbling or they're dealing with this," and that's kind of what he was always about of, like, this has no outside repercussions to anyone, but to him, it does, and I was like, "Yes,
yeah,
all these stories." Because a
sure,
lot of video games are like, "Oh, it's the end of the world," and blah, 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 and this was like, here's just a dude wanting to be a treasure hunter,
mm.
and it was just so much fun and just, like, the epitome of fun.
Yeah. That sort of like, "This is the end of my world, not the world." Do you feel like that's kind of, at the time, what you were connecting with as well, given that you were dealing with something similar?
Yeah, a lot of yeah, because even at that point, I think too, because I moved out here to LA to, like, direct film
Mm,
and whatnot, and those were always the stories that I loved.
yeah.
Um, and anyone who knows me, I always talk about this movie, but, like, Man on Fire was the movie that got me into filmmaking
Like, with
because
Denzel Washington?
yeah.
I love that movie.
Because I distinctly remember my dad, he was always the type that he was excitable and, like, he got excited about things, but he was never one that, like, kind of like, "You gotta see this. Oh my god, this is
Mm,
amazing." And that was one of the few moments where I saw him act that way. Because
mm,
I was walking by his bedroom and he stopped me like, "You gotta watch this. Oh my god, this is incredible." And fell in love with that movie right away. So and that one is entirely a, like, it's not the end of the world.
no,
It's
yeah,
the end of the world for this one character. And he's not he's a trained, like, soldier kind of, but he's
sure.
still, like, a normal dude to an extent. So yeah, it was, like, just a connection to a story of, like, yes,
Yeah.
this reminds me of the stories of, like, just what I love and what I wanna tell kind of and whatnot.
Yeah, we have to talk about Man on Fire for a second because
Yes.
I actually feel like it's such an underrated movie that
It
people
is
don't know about.
yes.
Yeah,
It is the most underrated movie. Tony Scott, the director, legitimately, like, like I said, people who know me, I will talk extensively about this movie because
yeah,
this is the movie that I watched, and I was like, "You can do this in film? Like, you can do this, like, visuals, all of this
yeah,
stuff." And, like, it was like, "Okay, this is what I wanna do. I
yeah.
want to direct because this is, like" everyone talks about, like, "Oh, Star Wars was that for me," and, like,
Mm.
no, it was, like, Man on Fire because I'd never seen this before. The sound design, the all of it, ooh.
There are so many I love that movie too because the like, Denzel makes good movies,
Mhm.
always.
Yeah.
Like, I'm someone's gonna be like, "We made this one bad," and I'm gonna be like, was it a bad movie? Because Denzel was still in it,
Yeah.
so I disagree with you. But the thing about that movie in particular that I love is how calm
Mhm.
he is throughout the entire film,
Yeah.
which is something that he pulls off very well and has done before. But there are so many little moments in it, and it is such a personal attachment that he has to what he's dealing with,
Yeah.
whereas, like, some of his other movies, you know, he is larger than life. He is, like, a larger than life
Yeah.
character, and this, he is like, "I'm here to save a little girl.
Yeah.
I am going to do it, and I care about this person, and that's the only reason." It's like what Taken wished it was,
Yes.
you know?
Oh, it is, and it boiled down to as well, like, Tony Scott was talking about that movie, he said, "If Denzel feels it, I want to express it visually."
Mm,
So and I say this a lot about Tony Scott films because he was utterly destroyed by critics,
mm,
and nowadays, the style that he was doing 20 years ago at this point, I think,
sure.
is becoming the, like, "Oh, this is incredible, this is groundbreaking style," and it was just, like, a director working with an actor who both of them had a vision as a whole of, like, "Okay, Denzel, you can be more subtle here because we're gonna have the screen exploding with color and overexposure and just"
Yeah. That was
yeah.
so good, and that's also unless I'm mixing my movies up, but I feel like passionately that I'm not, um, that's the movie that has a scene where Denzel is questioning someone, and they're under an overpass on
Mhm.
the car, and he's got this guy tied up, and he has shoved a grenade up his ass.
Mhm. That's the scene my dad pulled me in to
It's
watch.
the best
It's the
scene in
scene.
that movie. It is so good, and it is
Yes.
so brilliant and so twisted
Mhm.
and so well acted, and it's also, like, one of the classic, like, cool guys not looking at
Yep.
explosions, so you walk oh,
It's so good, and then a little timer pops up, and it's like,
yeah,
I had never I oh my god, you can have, like, a stopwatch like, he clicked a stopwatch and
and
it
it
actually
pops
showed
up.
up on it's yeah.
Oh,
Oh my god.
what a good movie.
I still to this day, if I'm ever directing something, I will watch that movie,
Mm,
like, a few days before just to, like, help me, like, get into the mindset and just like, "Okay, and now I'm, like, in director mode."
yeah, it
But, like,
is
yeah.
yeah, it is an incredible film, and if you haven't seen it, which
It's
a
a
lot of people haven't,
no,
it's
they
such a good
haven't.
movie.
It's a long film. Buckle up.
It is, but it doesn't feel
No.
long. It feels like it feels paced right,
Yeah.
you know?
Oh, it's incredibly paced right. Also, if you want to cry, like,
Yeah.
the fact that Denzel honestly did not get nominated for that film
Shocking.
is just because it was like, it's visuals and
No, no,
yeah.
no. See, it's some of his I think it's some of his best work, which I guess is bold. He has such a
I
stretch of best work,
I will
but
say all of his movies with Tony Scott are some of his best work
yeah.
because you had, Man on Fire, you had Unstoppable, you had Taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3.
Mhm.
Um, I'm spacing because they worked so
So
many
money
times
together,
together,
yeah.
but yeah.
To me, honestly, I could still watch Denzel kick ass. Like
Oh, yeah.
I would never watch a Denzel movie of him kicking ass and be like, I don't know if he can do that. Yes, he
Yeah.
can. It's Denzel Washington. Let's everybody just take a
Yeah.
breath.
Denzel can do whatever he wants,
Yeah, forever.
and yeah,
I don't care
yeah, no.
until the day he doesn't make movies anymore. He
Mhm.
can do exactly whatever he wants to do.
Yep.
Um,
I will pay for it, like, yep.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah. Again, I would watch him read a takeout menu.
Oh my god, yes.
Honestly,
Yeah.
honestly, and you know what, Denzel, if you're looking for one to read,
Yeah.
I'm available to find one for you. You just give me a call. But I do love this idea of like of a conflict that is smaller than life almost, where
Yeah.
you've got like larger than life, especially in video games, mostly are larger than life circumstances.
Yeah.
And I suppose like treasure hunting is still larger than life. It is
Yeah,
still like a cool escapism adventure thing,
yeah.
but it's no Overwatch. Like it's no
Yeah, it's not like, "Oh, if you fail at this, the entire world's gonna blow up." It's
yeah,
just like, if you fail at this, I mean, technically, no one's gonna know that you failed, but
true.
your family will and whatnot like that.
Yeah, and I really I like that as like a theme across the board,
Yeah,
video games and film and something that draws you to that character.
yeah.
Do you feel like that has sort of influenced the type of stuff that you're doing now where you're sort of sort of streaming and sort of like engaging with your own audience on a sometimes one-to-one basis when people are talking to you and you're speaking directly back?
In a yes and no situation because it almost more so connects back to the reason why I wanted to be a director.
Mm,
And what my philosophy always what I wanted it to be was the entertainment. Like, I've always considered myself an entertainer.
mhm,
I'm not here to, like I've always not even in the self-deprecating way of, like, I'm not here to change the world with stories. I'm here to, like I want to tell the people who, like, I had a bad day at work, I wanna go to a movie, and I wanna forget about it for 2 hours. And come to find out that that is what streaming
mm,
has turned in for me or turned into for me. And it's been a wild ride because I always I'm directing. That is my passion. I have found nothing else that I've wanted to ever do. And then the panini happened, and then we were
mhm.
all locked in. And I was like, I'll give this a try. I've never I never thought I would be good at it. I've always I think a lot of gamers I don't know, maybe I can do this.
Yeah,
And then I started doing it and started connecting with people, and it slowly now 2.5 years in, I'm like, "Oh, this is exactly kinda what I wanna do." I'm entertaining people. I talk about, on my channel that if you had a bad day, this is somewhere you can come in to forget about it. If you've had a good day, come and share,
mhm,
and it's the same philosophy. Um, and also getting to, sit with people and, if something funny happens on screen, I can't turn around and "Hey, did y'all see that?" But, camera, "Oh my god," and
yeah,
have that interaction that so many people are used to with sports and whatnot like that.
sure.
Um, so yeah, in a long-winded and I don't know, roundabout way, um, kind of because when it comes to the gaming, it's a little different because sometimes there are stories that people connect with more and whatnot, and there is I'm just gonna play Apex or whatever
Mm.
today and such like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so with Uncharted, you feel like you got that sort of desire to start sharing it with people or, like, sharing games with other people as opposed to it being a solo experience.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there was, like, a specific moment in the game that made you want to do that?
I don't know because you always wanna beat a game. You always want to, but I don't know if another game at that point in my life had gotten me to, I need to see how this ends because I love it so much.
Mhm,
And also the weird mix of, I don't want this to end because I'm having so much fun with it.
mhm.
Um, but getting to each, spectacle and just, pure fun
Yeah.
with the game. Where other ones are like, "Oh, yeah, I'm enjoying this, this is cool," but this was the first one of, I am playing a movie, and I'm enjoying this, and it's wild, and I don't want it to end, but I do want it to end because I need to know how this works out, but I don't want this feeling to end, and
Did you speaking of the movie aspect of it, did you see the Tom Holland, Mark Wahlberg film?
I did.
How did you feel?
I I feel like strong 50-50.
Okay.
I think Tom Holland was great.
Yeah,
I think he accomplished what, they were trying to portray with the younger Drake.
sure.
They absolutely ruined, Antonio Banderas, he was he's Antonio Banderas, put him on screen, I will watch him, and then they just kind of, unceremoniously, "Oh, he's gone." And now you have this generic, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it's a weird movie because I don't know who the Uncharted movie's for
Mm,
because they stole exact moments from the game, the giant airplane sequence is legitimately stolen, and other moments are not well, stolen is the wrong
wrong way, yeah.
word, but
Shot for shot, kind of
yeah,
like match.
recreated,
Yeah.
yeah, but, then they're changing other aspects, so it's you're not making this for the gamers who love this, but also the story is too generic for, new audiences,
Mm,
because there's nothing wrong with, cliches and generic stories, they work, but, this one is the reason Uncharted is so good is because it was a game about movies and, taking movies and letting us play that for the first time.
sure.
So, you taking it back and just making a movie is just It's
Yeah,
like
it's just like it's
pudding.
too many
There's
steps. Yeah,
yeah,
too many. You've taken it through too many back to backs.
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I'm listening to you talk about it, it's similar to my relationship with Assassin's Creed, which was my first video game that I was like, I love
God, I
playing this
loved yep,
story. It's such a good video
yep.
game. Or at least the first stretch of the franchise. Like I think
You
after a
start losing me
certain
at Black Flag.
yeah, and then like and it keeps there's certain elements of every game that are worth playing, I
Yeah.
guess. But like after a certain point, you're like, okay, we get it. Like,
That was the first time where I remember I had, a friend who's, like, huge comic book
sure,
fan, and
yeah,
he's, like, not read all of them, but, like, those type of people of, like, "I've read every single comic book, I've watched all the movies," and he talks about the, like, just kind of the feeling of, "Oh, this is not good,"
yeah.
and it was like this was the Assassin's Creed was definitely one of the first series I was like, I saw the birth of this, and
Mhm.
then I saw the death of the series of how I loved it, and
Yeah.
then whatever it's become.
Well, and then you've got the Michael Fassbender movie, which is just
Which could have
could
been good.
have
Everything
been,
about, like,
could have been.
they could have been, and then it just, like, the
Again,
bi
but yeah, but also I was like, again, the same way you felt about the Uncharted movie, I
yeah,
was like, who is this for?
yeah,
Because I went to go see that with my dad and my sister who didn't play the video games.
mm,
Alex has watched me like play them growing up because I've played them literally like that. Those were some of my first games. So I've played like every single one of them, and everyone's aware of the story.
yeah,
And then we went to the movie, and I remember being like, "Can we leave? Like, I
yeah,
don't wanna be I don't wanna be here." And they were like, "I don't wanna be here
yeah,
either." So yeah, it's interesting. It's like the video game element of building something that feels like a movie that you can then play and then making that into a movie. There's something that gets lost in
yeah,
translation between the 2.
yeah, and one biggest complaint about Assassin's Creed
Yeah.
movie that still bothers me, and this is a shout out to all Hollywood movies that you gotta stop doing this. They actually there's a giant because Assassin's Creed's all about, like, you jump off tall buildings because
Sure.
you're an assassin and you can, like, do this cool stuff. They shot that for real where this stunt actor did, I think at the time was, like, the Guinness World Record of, like, highest like, just jumping off something into a parachute, whatever you
Mhm.
call them. They took that and into the movie, made it look horrifically bad and CGI filled, and all these movies, like, they did that with the Uncharted as
Mm,
well, where they're like, "We shot this for real," and just like, well, then stop putting bad CGI around it and
mm,
making it look like why does Tom Holland have to do this stunt 300 times if
yeah.
you're just gonna make it look like you put him CGI'd in anyways? Like,
You know, the only thing I can give Tom Cruise, he doesn't do that. He does do them and they do look good.
yep.
Top Gun: Maverick looked great.
Still haven't seen it, but like,
Oh,
yeah, it's
there's a fun little I mean, I was upset watching this because I was like, why would you do it this way?" But but
mm,
then it just it's one of those things where you're like, "Was this necessary? Probably not. Did it
yeah,
look cool? Yeah."
yeah,
Which was they filmed all of the actors had to learn how to fly the actual planes,
yeah, yeah.
and they filmed with the cameras in the plane with them. I'm using the wrong word. There's like an actual name for the jet, the F something. Can you tell how educated I am about military planes? I don't want to be in them, and
No, no,
um,
I don't.
but they're filming. They actually filmed them flying, and
Mhm.
so they have the camera in the plane with
Oh,
them.
yeah, yeah.
And so there's a scene where Miles Teller was filming it, and they do this like big flip
Uh-huh.
basically, and he kept hitting his head on the top of the plane,
Oh.
which you're not supposed to do, but he's but they were cutting it together, and he was like when they were filming it, he was like, "Fuck, I hit my head again. We can't use that shot," and he kept doing it over.
Uh,
And then they did use that shot because they thought it made it like more tension filled.
yeah.
Which I'll be fair, I was also tension filled, but then I was like, then after I was like, "What do you mean he was flying the plane? He was flying the plane?" So it's always interesting because they went through like very intense. That's the only person I can say. I guess it does look good.
Yeah,
It does look good. They did
yeah.
destroy their set with one plane, and they were like, "I guess we'll use that shot then."
Oh, the flyover that you see
The
in the trailer,
flyover,
right?
yeah,
Where it
yeah.
just yeah,
Just blows up, and they're like, "I guess that works. I guess that'll
yeah.
be the shot." Our bad. But yeah, I think to get us out of the weeds of filmmaking a little bit, I am curious about how you feel when it comes to movies versus video games. So you talked about wanting to be a director, which
Mhm.
is very much kind of controlling that final like space of how someone sees a story
Yeah.
and how it's portrayed versus video games, and especially streaming video games for an audience.
Mhm.
You're then deciding and sort of showing an audience what happens based off of your control of the game and the
Mhm.
choices that you make. Do you feel like you ever are using some of those directorial instincts when you're playing games in that same way?
Oh, constantly.
Yeah.
Honestly, constantly. Um, Especially too because I'm producing a live show. Like, that's
Mhm,
what it still boils down to is, like, if there are people who wanna do streaming for a hobby,
mhm,
that's dope. Like, go off, play the games, whatnot. I'm more so because I'm on the content creating side of things that there is like in the back of my head, there's a constant like, okay, you're playing the game, you're playing the game. That could be potentially a bit. That could be something funny. That could be whatnot. You have to say something funny here that goes with what happened on screen. And then because I'm able to switch scenes between like my full camera, between my like gameplay screen, it's constantly like, okay, if this happened, it's a lot of, like, the same kinda techniques you use as a director of,
mhm,
"Okay, this is what perfect in my brain can happen. If this happens, this is how I react to that. If this is how I react to that." There's moments of just, like, pure, like, I didn't anticipate that at all.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's a constant of, like, okay, you're gonna say this line this way, and then, like, then you can look at the camera and whatnot, and there are more so, like, I would say it's pretty 50-50 of, like, okay, there are just randomness and whatnot, but especially with what I'm trying to do with my channel and where I'm trying to grow on YouTube and all these other places, it is a bit more of, like, not produced because I'm not writing a script for each
sure,
stream, but it is like, okay, I kinda need to keep aware of, like, this is what works well, this doesn't, my audience enjoys this kind of if I react this way. They don't really react at all if I do this and whatnot. So it is a lot of like that in the back of your head, a lot of the pre-planning that you typically do as a director and even the day of when you're fixing stuff on set,
mhm.
live for like an audience because it's a live show.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like the type of directing you're talking about is, like, similar to sort of live event, like, a sports directing
yeah,
or things like that, and, people don't realize. I know I didn't realize. I watched sports nonstop growing up, and then when I went to college, they were like, "Here's how live directing of sports works," and I was like,
yeah,
"Holy crap." Like, you don't realize how much people have to anticipate because it has to be seamless. You have to
yeah,
be watching the game and understand the game enough to know, "Okay, that pass is gonna go to a shot that you wanna see close up. We need to have a wide shot here." Like, you have to be ready to watch every single camera, take the right camera at the right
yeah.
moment, and then on top of that, in the video game space, you're also playing the game.
Yeah, you're playing the game, you have to make sure that the camera, because 'cause you're controlling it, is where an audience can see it,
Mhm,
where if you start telling a joke, that it'll cut well towards, like, what I do of, like, "Oh, I wanna make a TikTok out of this." I gotta make sure that that cuts well on
sure.
that screen, and focusing on, like, the post-production of things of, like, this is gonna go on TikTok, and also, like, this still has to be entertaining for people who are here live because that's who like, the show is for everybody, but at that moment, the show is for the live audience.
Mhm,
Um, so yeah, it's a part of streaming that, like, a lot of people don't think because they're like, "Oh, you just get on camera and you just play games." And just like, "No, I'm putting together a show. I'm making sure I'm not being hate rated by someone who wants to discriminate me because of, like, who I am.
right.
I have to interact with chat, but I gotta make sure I don't interact with chat too much because then it takes away from, like, the entertainment value, and it's yeah, it's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot like directing a live show, and,
Yeah,
um, it's a lot, but I love it.
yeah. Do you feel like so before you got into streaming yourself, you talked about that being, like, sort of a pandemic change for you. You also talked about Uncharted being the thing that made you want to engage with other people when it came to
Mhm.
games. So what's the bridge in between? Did you start watching streamers? Did you get like did you find what you were looking for on Twitch and then take your sort of leap later?
Um I think it was a mix of I had started watching gameplay videos a little bit from, like, content creators who, like, they play with their friends and they make funny videos out
Mm,
of stuff. So that started, and then one of the creators was like, "Hey, my partner, my girlfriend, she streams, so go hang out with her." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll watch." And that's where I started to learn more about Twitch. because I really didn't. I knew of live streaming, but I didn't know about the culture. I didn't know about, like, where these streamers were.
Mhm.
Um, and then I started hanging out there. I would play games on their channel with them a little bit because they play with the viewers. Um, and then, like, the lockdowns happened, and I was like, "Well, I guess I'm not doing my freelance in TV and film because that's not happening, so I need to figure out some way to keep myself entertained." Um, so it's like, I talked to my partner. I was like, What do you think if I start doing live streaming?" And she
Mhm.
was like, "Go for it." And I was
Yeah.
like, "Okay." Because I didn't know if it would work out for me because at the time, the streamers that I had seen were what I think a lot of people think of when you hear the word gameplay streamer, like people yelling and like, "Oh my god," like going wild and being incredible at the game.
Sure.
And I was like, "That's not me, but I think there's a market for me because I'm here and there's got to be more people that feel similar to me."
Sure, yeah.
So that was like part of the jumping off point of like, okay, I know what I can do and there's got to be other people who want more relaxed and chill. So that was a jumping off point of like, okay, I think I can do this.
Yeah.
And then starting those early days were wild. Because it was from our living room. Um, I had a PlayStation 4,
Mhm.
which you can do what is called AirPlay, which is you can send it to like another, like a computer screen, like Bluetooth and whatnot. And because I'm the way I am, if you watch a Twitch stream or YouTube stream, there's overlays, there's alerts, there's all this fun stuff that goes on, but you kind of need a PC. You need like a whole setup. I didn't have that. And you can stream from the consoles directly to like Twitch, but you can't have any of the flash. And I was like, I'm not doing that. If I'm
Mm.
doing this, I'm going full bore with it. So I wirelessly sent my PlayStation gameplay to my MacBook Pro,
Okay.
which I then ran my streaming software, put all my overlays over that, and then sent that out to Twitch all wirelessly.
Oh, wow.
Um, do you hear how I just like
Yeah,
ate that word?
wirelessly.
Wirelessly. I talk
Chew
for
it
a
up.
living on a microphone and I still can't speak. So yeah, I that's how I started my MacBook Pro on 5 books on our coffee table, a rickety boom arm that if you hit it, just the springs. um, and yeah, just sitting in our living room, destroying my back
Yeah.
because I had to sit up forward instead of like back on the couch. Um, yeah, and
Yeah.
that's how it started, and then it's progressed to what it is now, which is unbelievable. I'm
Yeah.
incredibly lucky to be in the position I'm in.
Yeah.
Um,
And when you do you feel like I feel like watching your streams, you do engage with people quite a bit, and then you're engaging with people on your other platforms where you're creating content. And it's interesting because it seems like I know I've seen other streamers where it's like, I'm playing the game, you can watch it, and that is what it is. Like, I'm not here to talk
yeah,
to you. You're here to enjoy myself, and enjoy me playing and being skilled, etc.
yeah,
And then there's the other types of streamers that are much more like yourself, where you actually are engaging with people talking, engaging with commenting, and
yeah.
those types of things. Do you feel like it's because you're still scratching that itch of wanting to share this experience with other people, and you're able to sort of create that community for people?
I would say yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's always been like part of why I love gaming is that it in a sense it's no different in certain situations of like watching your favorite TV show or
Mm,
watching like a sporting event. Like we surround ourselves with people that like, oh, we're gonna go watch this game and we're cheering and we're like hanging out. The only real difference is like, oh, I'm controlling what's happening on screen, but you get that sense of it's a community because there's people that like maybe people aren't good at gaming. Like I know my uncle in my family, like he used to love watching my cousin play games because he didn't really care about the gameplay, but he loved the cutscenes and
mm,
he's not a gamer. And there's people out there like that that like I can't play this and I'm not good at it, but I want to see what happens in the story
mhm,
or like all of us we want to be surrounded by people who have like similar interest in us.
mhm.
So it's a space of come hang out. Like, we're all gonna sit on this couch together
Yeah.
and watch what's going on, and I'm gonna laugh with y'all, I'm gonna joke, you all can, like, chat with each other, we can talk about your day, we can help out, like, it's part of just that ritual of, like, watching your favorite show with people that you love.
Yeah, it's interesting too because I think one of the things that you said that I think stuck out to me was the idea of I don't fit into sort of what's being streamed now, but I think there's space for me because obviously I'm watching this content and looking for something for myself.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of how video games in general as an industry work right now because video games are very much made for and marketed to men, like straight
Yeah.
men.
Yes.
Um, and that is not the only person that plays a
Yeah.
video game. But because there is that market that's working and that market that is selling, that's the market that is being made.
Yeah.
But the more you see kind of the engaging of content, I mean, the engaging with video games where it is on streaming and it is creators creating content around that content and engaging other people,
Yeah.
the more space there is for games that those people were already there wanting to be served to play games. But you
Yeah.
mentioned like people who aren't good at video games. It's like, are they not good at video games or are they not good at the video games that are available to them or
Yeah.
that they think of when they think about video games?
Yeah, it's you mentioning that, it's wild because I'm gonna have the numbers slightly off, but, like, analytically for me and the way that I go about producing my show and putting out the kind of vibes that I do,
Mm.
I think TikTok is a little different. I think it's skewed differently, but my Twitch community is 75% women.
Yeah, there's a ton
Like
of women who wanna play. I mean, I as I speak for my entire gender, no, I've talked to a lot of women because I recently got the chance to work on a video game, and I
Yeah.
was in that it's a very male-dominated industry on
Yeah.
both sides of the, controller, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But, I was talking to my female friends after, and so many of them were like, "Yeah, I'd love to play games, they just feel very intimidating."
Yes.
Or, like, I feel like I watch my boyfriend play and then, like, it's not that I don't wanna play it, it's just that he's really good at it, or I don't have the hand-eye coordination or this or that. Or, like, I had a friend who was talking about she's like, "I really would love to play video games, but I have a really hard time with, like, specifically shooting games, and it
Yeah.
just feels like there's nothing for me to play." I was like, "Girl, there are so many games that don't have shooting mechanics that you could be playing."
Yeah.
And obviously, it's like, I wish there were more of those for those types of people that want to play,
Mhm.
but it's not, it's also it's also that element of, like, if you play games on easy mode, you're an idiot. It's like, no, you're
Yeah.
playing to enjoy the game. Like, you
Yeah.
can play it on easy if that means you're gonna finish the game.
Yeah, and that's funny you talk about that because that's been a huge part of another aspect of it was there at the start, but it's become a huge cornerstone of my community that I
Mm,
talk about that, like, I'm not the greatest at these games,
mm,
and you don't have to be. Like, games are sure, like, you people who wanna try hard and do all that, like, go off, like, that's how you enjoy the game.
sure.
There are so many of us that just we wanna have fun. We wanna
Yeah.
play the game. Like, I've been playing Overwatch
Mhm,
2 lately, and my that's been over on TikTok, and so many the community now that I've gathered over there have been people just like, "I'm so scared to play this game
mhm.
because, like, I'm not good at it." And it's become a huge part of what I do as a streamer, is just like, you all do not have to be good at a game.
Yeah,
You don't have to be the best. Turn off voice chat, turn off the text chat in the game because so many people are toxic and they're gonna call you horrible because you're learning to play the game,
mhm,
but you don't have to be good, and that's the sad part of lately with a lot of gaming is it just feels that, like it's intimidating for so many people because they can't just learn by themselves because you get a wave of people calling you horrible at it,
sure.
and it's like
Yeah, online gaming is, like, one of the main things I refuse to do.
yeah,
Like, not in terms of, like, online streaming, like, I wouldn't necessarily be against that, but in terms of, like, playing like, I played Call of Duty a lot growing up.
yeah.
Eh, not because it's a great game, but not to slander it, but not because of the story, I'll say.
Yeah,
But because you enjoy shooting things and blowing things up and,
yeah,
it's a great game to come home after a stressful day and just,
yeah,
kind of completely zone out. I tried to play online as a teenager, and honestly, honest to God, I was like, "I have to get off of this for my mental health." Like, I
yeah,
have never played online of Call of Duty after the first couple times I tried,
yeah,
'cause people can hear your voice,
yep,
and they're like, "Oh, you're a woman," and or "You're dumb," or "You're bad at this," or whatever, and it's like, you are a 13-year-old boy,
yep.
and you're saying horrible things, or you're a grown man, and you're saying horrible
Yeah,
things.
it's disgusting what women, like, have to not have to, but, like, it's disgusting what women put up with in the
Mm.
gaming space
Yeah.
because it's just ridiculous, it's disgusting half the time. the person saying all that stuff too is like worse than who they just fought against. Like it's so horrible. And I mean, that's been an aspect of also why I've really pushed the like, you don't have to be good. Go
Mm,
out and do it. There's gonna be so much negativity, but the positive people out there who love you will find their way to you, and
yeah.
you can be yourself.
Yeah, I really love, like, I think you've talked kind of just in each section of what we've talked about today. You've talked about sort of just the enjoyment for enjoyment's sake
Yeah.
of things, and then creating a community in which people can understand that you can enjoy things.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's such a such a space that people don't give enough credibility to and
Yeah.
don't spend enough time thinking about, especially like when we're talking about Man on Fire, we're talking about just different video games and streaming and sports and all these different things. People don't take a lot of that seriously.
Yeah.
And it also sometimes like ascribes less value to it. I think you talked about that with the idea of like academically in film school, you have to
Yeah.
watch this movie or you have to watch that movie. And at a certain point, it does become frustrating because
Yeah.
it's like Citizen Kane's fine.
Yeah.
Someone's gonna
Mm.
rail me for that, but it's fine, but it's not my favorite movie in the world. I
Yeah.
didn't watch it and have my eyes opened and think this is gonna change. It's like, no, I watched Breaking Dawn Part 2 and I thought, wow, you can lie to an audience like that?
Yeah.
That's a brilliant way to ruin everyone's life in the theater. And I think about that. I think about that specific. I don't think you've seen to the Twilight movies, have you?
No.
So I'm gonna spoil something for you.
Okay.
Um, I hate to because it is one of the best. I'm gonna talk around it so the people who know what I'm talking about will know what
Uh-huh.
I'm talking about, and you can go into it in a pure way.
Okay, I have my coffee cup. I'm here.
So the Twilight Saga,
Mhm.
obviously, huge deal. Books first. The filmmakers had to contend with the fact that if you came to see the movies, you most likely had read the books and knew how everything ended. And so in the final film, they are following the storyline of the final book. The
Uh-huh.
final book is broken into 2 parts for the movies.
Breaking
They're
Dawn 1 and 2, right?
correct.
Alright, see,
See, yeah,
I
there
got
you
some of
go.
it.
So Breaking Dawn Part 2 Breaking Dawn Part 1 follows the book pretty well, and then Breaking Dawn Part 2, you're watching the movie, and you're like, "Okay, things are following along, following along, following along," and then something else happens that did not happen in the book, and it is shocking.
Oh.
It is like a complete departure, and seeing that I remember being in the movie theater when that happened and everyone freaking out because it was like the physical reaction everyone had because it was shocking because
Uh-huh.
it did not happen, and not only did it not happen, it was like something you could not come back from.
Yeah.
We were like, "Oh my god. Oh my god." And it lasts long enough that the entire theater is like, what the fuck is happening right now?" And it
Yeah.
continues on, and then it is revealed that it did not it's like a twist. It does a very good job of basically shocking the audience, getting a really big action sequence in,
Mhm.
and also revealing it in a way that does not feel cheap, but that it didn't happen.
Okay.
So, the entire audience of that theater was losing their minds
Yeah.
opening weekend, and I remember sitting in that movie theater and being like, "I didn't know you could control people like this."
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I didn't know you could ruin someone's afternoon and
Yeah.
then not only ruin their afternoon, but make their afternoon
Yeah.
in the same breath. And that I do think back about that and think about that, like, being a moment where I was like, "That's a conscious moment I had of wanting to make movies
Yeah.
or wanting to make TV or make media in general and be able to shock people in that way." And then I think about some of the movies that I watched for film school, and I remember thinking, "Oh, it was cool that they did that."
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild how, like, I think a lot of people completely forget about the fact that no matter if it's sports, movies, whatever, it's an entertainment business.
Yeah.
Like, you are more than, like, welcome as a storyteller or whatever. You wanna change the world. Like, a lot of, I think, storytellers, like, "I wanna tell the stories that change the world." And I've never felt that way, and I feel like a lot of people are just like, "I just wanna entertain."
Mm.
Like, this world is so dumpster fiery so much of the time that, like, if we as entertainers can do something to help out, like, even for a couple of hours,
Mm.
that's where I see a huge, like, I can help you. I feel this way, so I imagine you feel this way in life. Here, I can get on here and play games and tell funny jokes and be bad and, like, have silly stuff happen to me, and if it makes you laugh,
That's
like,
fine. Yeah, that's
yeah, you
enough.
don't have to, like Yeah, it's you don't have to, "I'm changing the way people think."
Yeah.
Like, if that's your philosophy in life, like, go at it, like, that's what you're put on this planet to do, but I full-heartedly, like, believe, like, I was put on this planet to entertain, and like
Mm.
I said, that's what I always wanted to do as directing, and now I get to do it almost every night.
Yeah.
Not every night because that's ugh, um, but I get to do that with just playing games and
Yeah.
hanging out with people.
I do think about it a lot because I think it was something that took me a long time to come to terms with
Yeah.
as, like, wanting to I think there is yeah, there's this idea, like, "I wanna change the world, I wanna do this." Um, and I guess what I've come to terms with is that it is actually kind of closer to what you're talking about in what you like in storytelling, which is that it is changing at least one person's circumstances in that moment.
Yeah.
And I think especially after the pandemic and recently just, like, with certain things that I'm personally dealing with and that I've had people around me deal with,
Mhm.
there is something far sometimes more valuable to giving someone 3 hours of time to be somewhere and engaging in something and not being alone than there is in a 2-hour film that is supposed to change the world and win a trophy.
Exactly.
Like, there's something about there's and I'm gonna reference another TV show, but there's this really great TV show on HBO Max called I Hate Suzie,
Mhm.
that stars Billie Piper from Doctor Who
Uh-huh.
and a bunch of other stuff, but that's where most people will know her from. Um, and I think it's 6 episodes, and it's really well done, it's really fun, it's really chaotic, but the very last scene in that show
Mhm.
is this moment of you've watched sort of this woman unravel over 6 episodes of her life falling apart, her family falling apart.
Oh.
It's very good. It's very good acting, very good writing, everything, but you've watched her sort of unravel, and she comes to this very um, precipice of a moment where she's sort of walking outside by herself and it is not she's not in a good place
Yeah.
and it isn't you are concerned for her well-being and she happens and it feels like something bad is going to happen
Mhm.
and then there are two men on the street walking and then you think something bad is definitely going to happen and they recognize her from she plays a famous actress in this show. They
Uh-huh.
recognize her and they talk to her and they say, "Are you okay?" And I think they recognize her. I might be wrong, but they definitely recognize that something's wrong with her,
Yeah.
and they ask if she's okay, and she says, "No," and then says, "Would it be okay if I just stayed with you for a little bit? I just don't think I can be by myself."
Yeah.
And they say, "Yes," and she walks away, and she's fine. Like, she's not fine, but
Yeah.
she has somewhere to be, and she has people to be with, even though they're
Mhm.
strangers, and it's this very very wonderful moment where they could have and perhaps the more dramatic choice would have been to have something go bad, but it
Yeah.
is this moment where you get just the kindness of strangers and the kindness of allowing yourself to be somewhere and for people to know that you're there and to have the responsibility to be somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think there's something more valuable in that than spending 2 hours watching Citizen Kane.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I that
I don't
that
know why I'm picking on Citizen
uh
Kane. Sorry, Orson. Um
No, but it's true because that's just part of it, of, like, I'm always down for, like, "Oh, okay, yeah, this was a Oscar movie because that's the only way I can think about it, but there is just as much merit, if not more, to these Michael Bay or all these movies where they're fun.
Yeah,
They're fun, they're the escapism in a way to get us out of the ordinary, and to, like, build off of, like, your example of the show. As a person, always keep in mind that the thing that you consider bad or the thing that you consider like, "Oh, this is blah, 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 blah," that's the one thing someone else is, like, holding on to make their day better.
mm,
And everything is not made for you as a person, and just because that happens doesn't mean you need to dunk on something for someone else. Like, if you don't like something, you're allowed to have criticism, but you don't need to call people dumb or stupid for liking that.
yeah.
Um, because that silly show that you think is garbage is the one thing maybe this person is looking forward to every day. And I think that's been a huge influx with social media and just how everything is going and giving people a voice for everything is it's more fun to dunk on things than to, like, say, "Oh, yeah, this was great," or just acknowledge, like, "Oh, this wasn't for me."
Sure.
Um, yeah, every all media is not built for you. It's not made for you. Um, and you kind of have to be okay with that
Yeah.
because you saying all these negative things about something that okay, just leave. Like that is my everyday life of like people coming, you're so cringe, you suck. I'm like, all right, leave.
Yeah.
Like
Oh, that's the other thing that really, really knocks my shoes off, knocks my hair back. I don't know, but grinds my gears.
yeah.
Is I'm like, it's free content.
Yeah.
It is you can go do
Yep.
anything else you want to do. You can go do, and it's fascinating to me how many people out there are are happy to dunk on something that is bringing someone else joy, and,
Yeah.
like, that's where they're getting their joy from
Yeah.
is just posting like, even just from this show, we've gotten, like, mostly very, very positive interaction and everything, but I've posted clips from, especially from our episodes about Supernatural,
Yeah.
where we've talked about, like, why women relate to those characters and why women relate to Dean Winchester, and our personal experiences. Like, I've had guests on that we've talked about sort of why we feel that's the show that fit us, even though perhaps it wasn't made for us kind of
Mhm.
thing. And the responses on the internet by men, I am like, "My god, like, you can scroll past this.
Yeah.
There's nothing that says you need to give me your opinion
Yeah.
about what I'm saying," or that my favorite is men watch the show too, and we're like, "Yeah, that's literally the point. We're
Yeah.
literally saying it was made for you and we still watch it." Like, I don't no one said it's just this fascinating thing where they're like, you can't take up space because I'm also taking up space.
Yeah.
And it's like, "No, there's space."
Yeah, you're not the main character. Like, commenter, you're not the main character in this world. Like,
Yeah.
you're sharing this with people. Yeah, it's just, like, so many people who have just these negative comments or they just wanna dunk on people. It's always the loudest person in the room that's fuck all to say. Like,
Yeah.
they just want to, like, say something mean
Mhm.
and then, like, show to their friends, like, "Look how cool I was. This thing that this person liked, I said it was dumb." But I've counterbalanced?
Balance,
I
yeah.
again,
Chewing those words today.
I do this for a living almost 6 days a week, and yet it still seems like people think it's a good idea to put a microphone in front of my
Yeah, why
face.
not?
Um, but it's I counter it with that, like, especially if someone comes into my stream
Mm,
and, like, they give me negative comments, like, I get a lot. I don't get a lot. Actually, I've been very, very lucky in the fact that the community that is now formed around me is very supportive, but there's
mm.
always gonna be the one, um, that I am so spite driven. We talked about it. I am so spite driven that, like, if someone comes in and they, like, try to be negative, I'm like, "I live in your head rent free. I apparently my existence bothers you so badly that you had to take time out of your day to
Yeah.
say something negative, and to you, you're trying to be funny, but to me, you are just like,
Mhm.
I'm in your head. You hate me so much just by looking at me? Good.
Yeah.
Good. Let my existence. I've been told I'm the problem with this world. Like, no lie, because I am bi and I wear a headset with horns on it. Someone's just like, "You're the problem with the society." I'm just like,
Oh,
"Because everyone is hot and I wear headphones on my headset, I'm the problem?
I
Got it. Okay."
Ah! I there's not even anything. I can't even dignify that with a
Yeah, no,
response.
it's just wild. But yeah, so many people want it because they get that little shot of serotonin because they think they own someone
Sure.
by being negative. And
Yeah.
it's easier to be negative than to say something positive about things.
Yeah, it's interesting too because I think, like, especially, like, coverage of film lately too,
Yeah.
or in the last however many years, whenever the MCU really started taking off
Yeah.
and to a point that, like, it's interesting because it's like so much of media coverage now it starts to do that as well. Like, not to pick on this movie because I do think it was a really good movie, but Everything Everywhere All at Once. Um,
Mhm.
so much. I was like, this is a really cool concept, great cast, amazing thing, great directors that are proven to be great directors. And then there was a shift in the marketing where instead of it being a movie, it was
Mhm.
about it being a better movie than a Marvel movie. And I just remember being so frustrated, and it did make me see the movie 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
I was, like, excited for it, I had seen so many trailers, and I was so hyped. And then it's not even just because I like Marvel, because it's not even about, "Oh, I love Marvel and I can't believe people would say something
Yeah.
about something that I dislike." It's just that it puts such a bad taste in my mouth
Yeah.
when you can't tell me what's good about your movie without telling me that another movie's bad.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's just been this shift in marketing overall where people are doing this, like, it's a multiverse, but it's not Marvel's multi it's
Yeah.
like, who cares? Like, what does that have to do with this movie?
Yeah.
And I think there's that shift where I don't it's sort of like, which came first, the chicken or the egg, but, like,
Mhm.
hater culture has sort of made its way into professional media journalism as well.
Yeah.
And then I think there's that it's that circle where it's like an echo chamber of, well, I mean, if Variety's saying,
Yeah.
then I can say, and it goes in and it's like, I have no problem with a critique of something. I think
Yeah.
critiquing things is good. It's how things get better and it's how people decide what to see and all of those kinds of things. But when you give everyone a chance to say something,
Yeah.
and then those people are watching the professionals say
Yeah.
bad things and dunk on people, then it's like, okay, well, I guess we're dunking.
Oh, it's the same thing with gaming too. Like on my Twitter feed, like I have multiple big streamers where they like I mean, there has been a stretch with gaming right now that it's not in the best place because a
Mm,
lot of games are becoming live service and it's all about money and all
yeah.
that. So these big streamers do nothing but complain about games. And so their comment section is just an echo chamber of so many people like, "Oh yeah, I agree with you because you said it." And it's just yeah, it's wild. Um and I think I touched on it a little bit, but it's also like I think people have to come to terms with like at least with and I say this as a millennial that I don't think we're not the target demographic anymore.
Mm,
We are phasing out that a lot of these industries like yes, media is built for everybody,
sure.
but we're not the target demographic anymore. It's time for the younger generation to enjoy
Mm,
like these things. And I think that's where I have like 50-50 with like remakes and reboots and whatnot. And like the biggest example lately was the newest Call of Duty game
mm,
because it's Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2,
mhm.
which came out in 2009. So it's like a reboot of the series. And one of the reviews I was watching compared it constantly to the
The
original.
original one, yeah.
And they were like, "Oh, it doesn't hit the same points as this. I remember playing this as a kid and or as whatever and enjoying this moment more." And it's just like, there's your problem. This game is not necessarily built for us who played the original.
Right.
This is built for those who didn't. Like, I mean, I would say how many people in 2009 who like weren't around at that point?
Sure, yeah.
This game is for them. And I feel like so many people are instead of taking it in a positive light, they're doing negative where it's just like, it's not as good. It's not as good. Instead of where I've reminded myself of like, I loved playing this in 2009. If another generation gets to have the joy that I felt, good.
Yeah.
Like, I acknowledge it. Like, there are going to be movies for me, but like, this game is not, it's for the younger people. It's time for them to enjoy. Like, this is really cool, right? And
Yeah.
it's just part of the philosophy of like, instead of dunking on things, like, take a step back and just think of like, again, this could be something someone's really looking forward to. They've had a bad day and then they open up and they see just nothing but negative comments about it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also like the other thing people don't I feel like people don't really understand is like certain things are gateways. So some kid goes and plays Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 now, the new one, and then goes, "Man, this is great. I wonder what
yeah,
the original was like." And goes
yeah,
back and plays the game that you think is perfect. Like,
yeah,
and that's great. That's a good thing. That's
yeah. You don't need to gatekeep things. Like,
No.
there's no reason to gatekeep things.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I'm always like, "Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss?" No.
yeah,
No, none
yeah,
of those things are good.
no, no,
No, but yeah, no, I think it's such a good point. It's like, before you send that tweet or that comment or that thing that you desperately think everyone in the world needs to know,
yeah,
all 20 of your followers, have to know right now.
yeah.
Like, it's good to know that, when you send it out, someone else is gonna see it, and that's the thing that's keeping them going.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a like, everyone says it, but you are talking to a real person.
Yeah.
Like, there's that disconnect because it's on the internet, it's fine. You're talking to someone real, like
Well, I think that's actually a really positive note to end on is this idea of like everything that you may think is stupid, someone else is getting joy from. So to be sort of cautious with the way that you speak about content. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and ask you the final question that I always ask everyone,
Mhm.
which is if you had never played Uncharted, what do you think would be different about you today?
Oh gosh. I really would be interested to see what kind of games I would be into because that really, really shaped such an important time of my life. Of I had lost my father. I at that point did not have the emotional ability to know how to cope with the feelings I was feeling because I was a high school kid. I don't
Mm,
know. Um but having this escape and being able to cope while also getting to maybe pretend that like, "Oh, he would have loved this," and have that memory. I don't know. It's wild because I can't even think back to not having that game because it came out in such an important time where I needed it to,
mm,
that there was no other game like that. That this game yeah, it's wild to think because, like, I think back to the Uncharted series, and it's such an important part of my life at that point that it didn't raise me because that's not the right way to put it, but it was the perfect escapism that I needed during that time in my life of losing my father and having that vacuum void of that person there and having the like, "Oh, the world around me is burning, but I can play as Nathan Drake, and I can be a hero, and I can have fun." And I really don't think I would have had that innate feeling of wanting to entertain people
mm,
if that game hadn't been around. Because I remember being at the lowest and feeling helpless and alone, and that joy of just having a spark of, "This is fun. Oh, yeah, this is part of entertainment, and this is the joy you feel in life."
yeah,
And, yeah, I don't think it would've become such an important part of me of wanting to help others feel better and to
yeah.
get out of that, like, dark hole and whatnot.
Oh, I love that. I'm glad. I love when something can not only like pull you out of your own dark hole, but inspire you to pull other people out of
Yeah.
their dark holes. Um, and I think that's just a really nice and wonderful sentiment. So I am glad that a treasure hunter was there for you, and
Yeah.
that you can be there for other people now too.
I love you, Nolan North, the voice actor of Nathan Drake, you're amazing.
Thank you, Nolan.
Yeah.
And then I think also like when we said it at the beginning, I was like, oh, we have to end on it. I love that the game that sort of started it all for you has this one little nugget of a Latin saying of sic parvis magna, of greatness from small beginnings. Because it's this idea that like you also are on your own path of that from a a little nugget of joy. And I really like that you can sort of give that small beginning to people too as you give people joy and give people a space to be. So
How dare you make me cry? Don't how dare you? How dare you?
yeah, I think it's nice. So I hope everyone else listening has found a way to have their small beginning as well,
Mhm.
whether that's joy or something that scratches an itch, or even Citizen Kane. Maybe that's your small beginning. But I but I hope everyone's finding that space and finding something that they love, and remembering that like you can just simply enjoy something to enjoy it. Like that is just as valid as learning something new or creating something or doing something academic or any of those other things. So I do hope people keep that in mind as they leave today's episode and go into their week for the rest of the week, and just find things that you enjoy, and consume them for the sake of consuming them and enjoying them and being entertained. So thank you again, Fernando, for joining me. I think this was a wonderful conversation, and I hope everyone else enjoyed it. And I hope this week you guys can find your small beginning and enjoy the heart of Nathan Drake in this episode. Between now and next Wednesday, if you want to keep in touch, you can follow me on social media at Marissa Kamari, anywhere you get your social media fix. You can also sign up for my newsletter by going to our website, tandonproductions.com, clicking on You Are What You Love, and signing up there. I send out an issue with every episode of this podcast. And we just started a Discord server, so if you want to connect with me, with other listeners, and talk about the types of things that we are talking about on this show, you can join that by clicking on the link in the episode description. Until next Wednesday, I hope you are enjoying what you love. Until next Wednesday, I hope you are enjoying what you love.